Hi, everyone.
Greetings.
We're in Ray Franz's Crisis of Conscience. The chapter is Internal Upheaval and Reconstruction. It's page 69?
Page 69. And
Yeah.
we've just started. We're 2 pages in, and it's got to the point where there's a friction developing on the governing body, especially between Nathan Knorr and his understanding of what his responsibilities are and what Ray Franz and maybe some of the others think about what the new structure should be now that they have a governing body anyway.
Yeah, and also because of the change in congregations.
Yeah.
So, all right. In 1975, 2 Bethl Elders, one a senior member of the service department and the other the assistant Bethel home overseer, wrote letters to the governing body expressing concern over certain conditions prevalent within the headquarters staff, specifically referring to an atmosphere of fear generated by those having oversight and a growing feeling of discouragement and resultant discontent. At that time, anyone applying for service at headquarters, Bethel service, had to agree to stay a minimum of 4 years. Most of the applicants were young men, 19 and 20 years of age. 4 years equaled 1/5 of the life they had thus far lived. When at the meal tables, I often asked the person next to me, "How long have you been here?" In the 10 years I had by now spent at headquarters, I had never heard one of these young men respond by saying in round figures, about a year or about 2 years. Invariably, the answer was 1 and 7, 2 and 5, 3 and 1, and so forth, always giving the year or years and the exact number of months. I could not help but think of the way men serving a prison sentence often follow a similar practice of marking off time.
Sad. Generally, it was difficult to get these young men to express themselves about their service at headquarters. As I learned from friends who worked more closely with them, they were unwilling to say much in an open way, since they feared that anything they said that was not positive would cause them to be classed as what was popularly called a BA, someone with a bad attitude. Many felt like cogs in a machine, viewed as workers but not as persons. Job insecurity resulted from knowing that they could be shifted at any time to another work assignment without any previous discussion and often with no explanation for the change made. Management employee lines were clearly drawn and carefully maintained.
Okay, sorry. Okay. The monthly allowance of $14 often barely covered, and in some cases was less than, their transportation costs going to and from the Kingdom Hall meetings. Those whose family or friends were more affluent had no problem as they received outside assistance, but others rarely could afford anything beyond bare necessities. Those from more distant points, particularly those from the western states, might find it virtually impossible to spend vacations with their families, particularly if they came from a poor family. Yet they were regularly hearing greetings passed on to the Bethl family from members of the governing body and others as they traveled around the country and in other parts of the world giving talks. They saw the corporation officers driving new Oldsmobiles, bought by the society and serviced and cleaned by workers like themselves. Their work schedule of 8 hours and 40 minutes each day, and 4 hours on Saturday morning, combined with attendance at meetings 3 times a week, plus the weekly witnessing activity, seemed to many to make their lives very cramped, routine, tiring. But they knew that to lessen up in any of these areas would undoubtedly put them in the BA class and result in their being called to a meeting designed to correct their attitude.
The letters by the two Bethl Elders touched on these areas, but without going into detail. The president again seemed to feel, unfortunately, that this constituted criticism of his administration. He expressed himself to the governing body as wanting a hearing to be held on the matter, and on April 2nd, 1975, this was done. A number of Bethl Elders spoke, and many of the earlier mentioned specifics were there aired. Those speaking did not indulge in personalities and made no demands, but they stressed the need for more consideration of the individual, for brotherly communication, the benefit of letting those close to problems share in decisions and solutions. As the assistant Bethel home overseer put it, quote, "We seem more concerned about production than people." The staff doctor, Dr. Dixon, related that he frequently received visits from married couples distressed due to the inability of the wives to cope with the pressures and keep up with the demanding schedule, many of the women breaking into tears when talking to him. A week later, April the 9th, the official minutes of the governing body session stated, and here's a direct quotation, so there's some abbreviations in here, comments were made on the relationship of the governing body and the corporation and what was published in the Watchtower of December 15, 1971. It was agreed that a committee of 5 made up of L.K. Greenlees, A.D. Schroeder, R.V. Franz, Dan Sydlik, and J.C. Booth go into matters concerning this subject and the duties of the officers of the corporations and related matters, and take into consideration the thoughts of N.H. Knorr, F.W. Franz, and G. Suter, who are officers of the two societies, and then bring recommendations. The whole idea is to strengthen the unity of the organization. That's the end of the direct quote from the minutes.
At a session 3 weeks later, April 30, President Knorr surprised us by making a motion that thenceforth all matters be decided by a 2/3 vote of the active membership, which by then numbered 17. Following this, the official minutes of that session relate, and then he's quoting, L.K. Greenlees then began his report from the Committee of 5 on Brother Knorr's request to tell him that he should do what he should do. The committee considered the Watchtower of December 15, 1971, paragraph 29, very carefully. Also page 760. The committee feels that today the governing body should be directing the corporations and not the other way around. The corporations should recognize that the governing body of 17 members has the responsibility to administer the work in the congregations throughout the world. Therefore, there has been a delay of putting the arrangement in effect at Bethel as compared to the congregations. There has been confusion. We do not want a dual organization. There followed a lengthy discussion of questions relating to the governing body and the corporations and to the president, with comments by all members present. At the close of the day, a motion was proposed by Knorr, followed by a comment by Chitty. Greenlees also presented a motion. It was agreed that the 3 should be Xeroxed and copies given to all members, and meet again the next day at 8 a.m. There would be time to pray over the matter, which is so important.
The Xerox motions referred to read as follows. Quote, N.H. Knorr's motion. I move the governing body to take over responsibility of looking after the work directed in the Charter of the Pennsylvania Corporation and assume the responsibilities set out in the Charter of the Pennsylvania Corporation and all other corporations throughout the world used by Jehovah's Witnesses. That's the end of the Knorr motion. Chitty's motion. E.C. Chitty said, to take over means relieve the other party. I believe, for my part, the responsibility stays as it is. Rather, it would be right to say supervise the responsibility. So that's not really a motion, that's a comment on the motion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Greenlees said, I move that the governing body undertake in harmony with the scriptures the full responsibility and authority for the administration and supervision of the worldwide association of Jehovah's Witnesses and their activities, that all members and officers of any and all corporations used by Jehovah's Witnesses will act in harmony with and under direction of this governing body, that this enhanced relationship between the governing body and the corporations go into effect as soon as can reasonably be done without hurt or damage to the kingdom work. So obviously Knorr's and Greenlees' motions are going to come into conflict, and all of this seems to be going in, at least the other two comments here by Chitty and Greenlees seem to be favorable to Ray Franz's view.
Point of view, yeah.
Rather than Knorr's, yeah. So what's going to happen? We're going to put in a link to Watchtower Myths, God's Organization versus Yahweh's Natural Organic Family. That's a series of videos that we did some years ago looking at the theocratic arrangement of the Torah specifically. And we look at Genesis, and we also look into Exodus, right up into Mount Sinai and the giving of the law. What was theocracy really like, or what it should have been like?
Okay.
See you next time.